Welcome to our webinar, How Atlassian Does DevOps.
Finally, best for last, let's get Nick. Nick will share how in a DevOps world where dev teams deploy more frequently, our operations and IT teams try to prevent failures, and when they do happen, how we try to recover more quickly. So Nick, on to you.
Hi, my name's Nick Wright, and I'm the head of site reliability at Atlassian. Now what this means, and you can see that I'm not afraid to get my hands or face a little dirty in the process, is that we work with teams across Atlassian to ensure that they're prepared to deal with things when they go wrong. In the webinar so far, we've heard about how we use DevOps approaches to empower our development teams, allowing them to release directly to production and overall shortening the amount of time between build and deploy, and allowing rapid feedback for new features and enhancements. This means that where we have these approaches in place, we need to take a different approach to the more traditional centralized operations team. When the rate of change becomes more rapid, we can't expect to have a comprehensive set of runbooks and operational processes to handle all situations. Instead, we need to make sure that the same dev teams who are getting rapid feedback on new features are able to be directly involved in our incident response. We need these teams to be prepared and to know what to do when alerts fire and things don't go as they should. I'm going to be covering the way that we run operations at Atlassian and how we've been able to build it to be compatible with the DevOps approaches that we've been discussing so far. Now firstly, I'll talk about the need for standardization across all teams on a single Atlassian-wide incident process. Next, we'll discuss how we involve teams from all parts of the business in that process, allowing us to include the right people so that they can respond and fix quickly. I'll detail how we use Atlassian tools to make it all work. Lastly, as we know, a key aspect of incident and problem management is the opportunity to learn from things that go wrong. We aim to evolve our services and the processes that we use to manage them so that we prevent things failing in the future. So firstly, that standardized approach to incident response. Now you can easily imagine, with all the teams and all the flexibility that we have at Atlassian, that each team may very well have its own processes. And that's certainly the case in terms of tech, practices, and development patterns. But when things go wrong and they affect our customers or our internal users broadly, we need to come together and behave consistently. Now this is important because it allows us to cultivate a troubleshooting mindset where we focus on restoring service quickly and keeping our customers and our users up to date. We ensure that we track all of the actions that are taken for our post-incident review process. When it comes to reporting, we key off the incident tickets themselves, something that would not be possible without consistency in terms of how that information is recorded. When we designed our process, we looked to industry best practices in the form of ITIL incident and problem management. This has allowed us to develop a flexible process and to standardize on key terminology, such as the very definition of an incident, what a problem is, and a known error. We've developed an incident classification scheme, a way to define severity across the broad range of services that we deal with, and a way to track problems, investigations, and into the root cause that drives fixes across our products. So let's take a look at how an incident works at Atlassian and how we use Atlassian tools to support teams when something goes wrong. Let's take a look at what happens when a system goes offline that immediately impacts our customers. Both internally and externally, we allow our users to raise incidents directly with us. If it's a critical service, then these alerts can quickly start to pile up in our service desk queue. And of course, we run our own back-end monitoring services as well, tracking the state of many IT systems which our developers are deploying to. And this can generate a lot of noise, making it hard to determine which of the system alerts that we're receiving are related to those customer queries that are coming into our service desk. And that's where chat tools can help, which is why ChatOps, the practice of leveraging chat and ops, is picking up steam. By aggregating our alerts into a single information stream in a chat room, we can make this information more digestible than where it lives on separate systems and dashboards that we've built for each of our services. But we can do better still, as I'll get to shortly. So let's first take a look at the big picture. We're going to be hearing directly from our customers, but if we can get a heads up from system alerts, we might be able to get a fix in place quickly enough that only a few people are impacted. When notifications are pushed directly into HipChat via integrations with our monitoring systems, we can directly inform the relevant teams that there's a problem with their system. If the alert is related to a recent change, that team may be able to quickly disable the feature flag or be able to roll back the change. In other cases though, a customer impacting problem will trigger the creation of an incident ticket in Jira. And the very first thing we need to do is to make sure that we have the right team assembled. We facilitate this again via HipChat. All the necessary people can be invited to a dedicated room, which we refer to as a hot room. And by moving the conversation there, we can reduce the noise in our main operations chat rooms and allow the team to focus on fixing the problem at hand. Now, if possible, we may have identified a known error scenario, which means that we can immediately apply a runbook to resolve the situation. Of course, we have runbooks to cover how to roll back our changes and how to redeploy a known good configuration if that's the quickest fix possible. Here's a view of one of our operations rooms in HipChat where the alerts are posted. Now, as we've shown, these alerts might come from a lot of different sources, and this can lead to a very noisy chat room. And while it's certainly better to have all of the notifications in one searchable information stream, we've found that as the number of alerts increases further, additional support tools can help. Now, Big Panda is a tool which integrates with HipChat and uses a sophisticated grouping algorithm to allow related alerts to be shown together on a side panel. This cuts through the noise and allows us to start investigating faster. Once we create the incident ticket in Service Desk, we can start our incident process workflow. A crucial early step in the process is to assess severity. Our engineers are able to categorize the degree of impact to a service, and as well as the number of users that are impacted, and we can use that to derive an initial assessment and therefore determine how urgently this will be handled. We've developed custom fields in Jira which prompt our engineers to respond and to make this initial assessment. Now, of course, we don't use Atlassian tools in every part of the process. Here's an example of where we use Status Page to communicate with stakeholders, both internally and externally. And we push updates to Status Page during the incident on regular intervals. In order to bring our teams together into a dedicated room, we can click the Create Room button from within the Jira ticket itself. This allows us to pull up a list of likely collaborators that we need to involve in the incident. This will generate the creation of the hot room in HipChat, as well as ping an invite to all of the people that we need to include in the incident. Once the room is created and everybody is joined, the discussion gets underway in terms of how we're going to figure out what went wrong and how we're going to fix it. Now, one of the important ITIL recommendations is a classification scheme so that we can provide a detailed breakdown of the number of incidents that are impacting our services and the type of impact that they've been causing. Here we indicate that the incident was attributed to a bug that had been introduced by a change to our service. So as I've shown, HipChat allows us to do some really awesome things in terms of bringing our alerts into a single place and allowing our teams to focus on investigating and fixing. Now, HipChat has an extensive framework to allow us to integrate with third-party tools as well. And that, as I showed in the example of Big Panda, was a really helpful way to group our alerts together. Now, the third and final part that I wanted to cover in my part of this talk is that we move into the post-mortem or post-incident review process once we've resolved the incident. Now, this is another way that we complete that feedback loop in the diagram that we showed earlier in the webinar. And it's another way that we can learn and evolve our products based on the way that they behave or misbehave in the production environment. Now, once the incident has been resolved, there's a couple of different options for actually tracking the post-incident review activities: Jira or Confluence. Now, we've used both, and each brings its own set of advantages. With Confluence, you can configure templates for a standard layout, and it's easy to get up and running quickly. With Jira, you can build a more structured workflow to allow handling of many incidents across a range of teams, and then use that to derive reports on how your teams are progressing by looking at the Jira ticket data. The important part here is that you're able to develop a good understanding of the root cause of your outage and use this to determine the best set of actions and preventative tasks so that we don't see the same thing happen again. We can also review the way in which we actually dealt with the incident so that if there's any process improvements that we can make, we'll include those too. Now here's an example of an incident report as we've written it up using a standard Confluence template. And as you can see at the bottom, we've been able to link to actions in a specific section of that report. Over in Jira Service Desk, we've been able to bring a couple of key improvements to our process. First, it's really important that you get your postmortems completed quickly. People forget details and move on to the next thing, so you want to capture that data while it's still fresh in their minds. So we've developed a Jira workflow that stepped our teams through key milestones in order to complete their investigation with a target of 2 days of an incident being closed. Now second, by using Jira issue links, we've been able to build reports on top of the database so that we could use this to see whether our teams are getting through their problem backlog and make sure that these are being completed at a high priority. In other words, quickly. So we basically ended up going to Jira Service Desk because we'd arrived at a certain scale. Once we had our system up and running across enough teams, it became more appropriate to use a workflow. So when we dive into the reviewing component of our workflow, you can see that we track through these steps methodically, and each of these has a target time frame in which we aim to complete them. Here's a couple of examples of reports that we've built out of the Jira database to allow us to show, in this particular case, whether the team are doing a good job of resolving incidents and tracking follow-up actions, which themselves have a 4-week target completion time. So the result of putting these approaches in place is that we've been able to build an overall better response and a faster time to resolution than we would have had we had to go with the traditional level 1 and level 2 escalation approach. And everyone's happy. So I'd like to illustrate this with an example from one of our specific teams where we were able to spend a quarter of effort looking at a range of different incidents and being able to determine the best appropriate steps to take. At the start of the quarter, we were generally quite slow at dealing with these specific problems. But once we'd had the team investigate and produce diagnosis tools that were able to focus in on specific log files and specific entries, we'd gotten that time consistently down to less than 25 minutes. Now this was a huge win for that particular team and service, and overall demonstrated the value of having the right people respond directly whenever anything went wrong.
Thanks, Nick. We hope you enjoyed this webinar that was more practical in nature, sharing with you how Atlassian teams do DevOps. As a recap, so Tanguy started first by explaining how the HipChat team in Sydney provides more accountability and responsibility to its developers. They build, they ship, and they run their product. Mike then shared with us how automation has helped his team remain small, but while still supporting Atlassian in hypergrowth. His team, the build engineering team, are delivering 10 times more builds, and they can spin multiple servers in the same amount of time that it would take them to just spin one server. So that's quite tremendous. And finally, Nick talked about how in a DevOps environment where you have software teams like this that have a lot more accountability and responsibility, they can and ship more often, they can benefit from standardized processes like incident management based on ITIL best practices to ensure that your infrastructure remains reliable and you can resolve incidents faster. So back to our earlier examples from Netflix and Amazon, who are two companies doing hundreds of thousands or millions of deployments every year. It's all about continuous improvements, and we hope that today you got quite a few ideas that you can start to take on to implement tomorrow. And with those small improvements, you can get tremendous benefits from shipping smaller increments day in, day out, more often rather than infrequently and in large batches. Because those smaller increments make it easier to assess impacts on customers, whether they're positive or negative, find the root cause of incidents, and roll back features if need be. So your software and IT teams can become a lot more performant and deliver value a lot more quickly and more easily. So as a reminder, here's the DevOps loop for software development and delivery. And we're showing the Atlassian products that were covered today by Tanguy, by Mike, and by Nick to support you with this software development and delivery process. You can try all these products for free at atlassian.com/devops-tools.
Thank you for watching our webinar on how Atlassian does DevOps. If you want to get the Atlassian tools to practice DevOps, click on the green Go button on the left. To check how to run IT support the DevOps way, click the video on the right of your screen. To continue on the next section of this webinar, click the See What's Next button on the bottom right of your screen. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.